welcome all our viewers, and we greet them with a universal greeting of peace. This is our second episode. We are here to discuss the subject of spirituality as we commenced this journey with our first episode. Now, in this episode, we'd like to address in terms of what is spirituality and what is the different type of spirituality. In fact, if we go and study, whether we pick up any book, we pick up any other internet readings, we go to Google, and we find there are many different, it's like a jungle, there's confusion as to where do we go. In a nutshell, basically, there's two different types of spirituality. One, we find general spirituality, and then there's a divine spirituality. And what we're after is actually divine spirituality. And just to give you a hint in terms of what general spirituality and what the Encyclopedia Britannica says about spirituality, you could look this up for yourself. And in the Encyclopedia Britannica, we find it states the quality or the state of being attached to or concerned with religious questions and values, etc. You can read further. I'm not going to go, due to shortage of time, further into that, but there's more reading to it as well. But at the same time, we also look at a number of writings that you can pick up, and it will discuss the subject of spirituality, and there's many of them. At least there's 50 of them that I've looked at. For example, there's one of them that's called The Secret. Then there's another book called The Celestine Prophecy, The Alchemist, and so forth. So basically you could go and find these books, and they will discuss generality in terms of what spirituality, and even there's people out there, crazy stuff out there on the internet. I read one of them that if you have a personal relationship with your dog or animal, and that is also spirituality. So it's very vast and very vague terminology the way it's been applied out there. So we need to be very cautious and careful as to which spirituality are we addressing. So let us distinguish between the two. There is a general spirituality that is discussed in terms of any vast subject you could think of, and there's a divine spirituality. What we're after is a divine spirituality. That why is that we have so many different problems today in our lives, and things seem to be getting worse and worse day by day, and we can't seem to get any answers or solutions to it. And that's what we want to get bottom of, is that how you can resolve these problems and frustrations that we go every day. And that is through the divine spirituality. One of the reasons why we have these massive problems in our daily lives is that there's a huge disconnect with our Creator. That our Creator, who created us, obviously well knew that with this human being as a creature, what are its needs, what are its wants, what are its requirements there to sustain physically as well as mentally and as well as spiritually. So I give you an example of if you were to have a problem in one of the automobile that you drive, and that particular automobile continuously have those problems, and you go to your doctor and your family physician and you say, I have an automobile which have certain problems, and he will laugh at you and say, well, I'm not the expert. I did not manufacture this automobile. I know nothing about this automobile. So you can't just go to anybody and ask them, even if you, let's say you drive Ford, and you can't go to Toyota and say, there's some serious problems, we need some codes to fix this computer on this automobile. And they will say, we do not have those codes. You're going to have to go to the manufacturer of Ford. They have those codes, and they have secret codes they will not release to anybody else except for they keep it to their own company. And you have to take that particular automobile to that manufacturer to resolve those problems that you're encountering. In the same manner, we have this very complex human being that is created and sent here on the earth. Obviously, it would have also a lot of problems that it would encounter throughout his life. So we know that if we have physical problems, we could turn to medical authorities, go to them, and they will look after those problems. We could have mental issues and mental problems, and we have certainly psychologists to address that. So we have different authorities who can address these problems. But when it comes to the spirit and the spirituality, it is very difficult. We can't seem to find anybody out there, these authorities, that can address this particular need and this particular huge problem that's everywhere. So just like that you have experts on different automobiles, whether it's a creation of anything, any human-made created things that we have, it does encounter problems. If you have a cellular phone, it encounters problems. So you take it to the manufacturer or the person who's an expert on that, they will take care of that for you. In the same manner, how is it that when we encounter problems spiritually, then we don't seem to have anybody we can turn to and go to and say, how can they address this problem that we have? But not to despair. Out there, when your Creator created you and other creation, along with that, He also sent a manual as well. And in that manual, it spells out some of the problems that we'll encounter. It also spells out the solutions that it offers those solutions. Now, in our future episode, we will have very little time to go through here in this particular episode, but in our future episode, we're going to address the topic of authentication of different books, whether they are man-written books or those are divine revelation. So we will go through that and authenticate in terms of which book seems to said what about spirituality, this particular topic, and what kind of solutions does it offer to human beings. How can we apply that in our daily lives and be able to eliminate these problems that we do encounter every day in our lives? So that's a huge topic that we will be addressing. It needs some quite number of episodes to get bottom of that. So hopefully you will tune in the future episode, which we will tackle the authentication process of these divine books and any human written books as well. But just in the same manner, I ask you, for example, if you are driving on the highway and all of a sudden on the news that you hear that there's certain exit that you should take because down the road there's a huge accident and there might be a 3-hour delay. And you're thinking, you ask yourself, well, I don't know if this is a reliable source. Should I listen to them or should I just continue on driving because I don't trust them? So you go with your instinct and you say, you know what, I'm just going to go because I think that's a shorter route to my destination. So you continue on. And until you hit that accident and a blockade, and there's a huge blockade, they're telling you you're going to be stuck for 3 hours. Now you could kick yourself and say, darn it, I should have listened to them. And I should have taken that early exit and I could have avoided this 3 hour of delay. So now you rely on and you look for a reliable source that whether you can trust it and then act upon it and be able to avoid that problem. In the same manner, I give you an illustration. If we were to lock up human beings and some animals in an auditorium, and after a while, an announcement has been made that there's a sudden emergency and you should go to the nearest exit and you should take that exit and leave the building. Now, obviously, as a human being, you're going to say, that's a reliable source. And I'm not going to take a chance with my family sitting in an auditorium. You're going to bolt out of that auditorium, nearest exit that you can find, and say, I'm out of here. But do the animals are going to do the same thing? Are they going to tell each other, we just heard an announcement of an emergency, and let's just bolt through that nearest exit? Obviously not. They do not understand that language. They do not know what that is. Same thing as a human being. When you take over the animalistic state, you begin to behave and act like an animal. Then you will reject any divine revelation, and you will ask yourself that, why am I following or listening to this? I shouldn't have to listen to this. I'm just going to go about my merry way every day. What I do, I'm just going to continue to do that. But the problem is, then in the same illustration, when this announcement was made and you bolted out of that auditorium, you knew it was reliable news. And you knew that there could be a possible emergency, and you're not going to risk your life of your family and kids that are sitting with you, you will leave those exits because you believe that was a reliable source where the announcement came upon those speakers. Now, with the animals, obviously they cannot distinguish that. They do not understand that language. So when we as a human being begin to behave like animals, and if you look at an interesting way, that a human being has a heart and a brain and head up here, and your private parts are down there. So God, or the creator, we could call it creator or supreme power or God, whatever name you want to give, but the manufacturer of this body, human being, this being, put this head and heart above in a high level, in a height. So it's saying use this to conquer and procure those heights, meaning the divine elevation. You need to procure that by using these tools that he has given you. And we discover these are the tools that are hidden with the human being, the brain and the mind. We must use that. The heart also has a role to play. Also, there's a soul in our body. It also has a role to play. So in conjunction with the heart and with the soul and with the mind, if it works together in conjunction, in harmony, then you could reach to certain and certainly peaceful solution to problems that we have. In the last episode, I gave you some details of that, of mind, heart, this body, and the soul, and what it entails, what its fruits are. I discussed that last time. So we as a human being, we must embark upon this greater mission. We have got very little time to live in this world and just say we just came here in this world and have this thought of, and just the way the animals have, that they live here, they come here, they breathe, they eat, and then they just die off. So there's no higher spiritual purpose for these animals. But don't behave like this, like the animals behave. We as a human being certainly have a higher role and higher purpose and a divine purpose here on the earth, because we possess a soul in our body. The animals do not possess a soul in their body. So we must make that distinction between animals and ourselves. But however, when we begin to behave like animals, then we could see the outcome of that we begin to suffer, and we begin to suffer greatly. So coming back to now this divine spirituality, there are certain waves in this universe that are there every day. We are surrounded by them. When we speak, there are certain waves and energy released around us. And that has to deal with spirituality as well. So there are certain thoughts that come into our mind, and we speak and bring it to our tongue then. Okay, and this is how the process works as well. By the way, just something came to mind, because we will tackle that as well in our future episode, but definitely we had some questioners who were questioning us in terms of whether I'm reading off a teleprompter or they have the misconception. No, I'm not reading off a teleprompter, but I haven't written a script and then handed over to be read off the teleprompter. My heart is a teleprompter. In spirituality, that's what we're going to teach you, that how you can speak from your heart and how you could bring your heart to that level of spiritual level and spiritual state, that then you can speak freely from your heart and you will have that divine help. How you can address issues and daily problems, and whenever you address any topic, how you could divinely and with the Spirit, with the help of the Spirit that resides within us, that it can assist you in everyday matters, whether you're delivering a speech, whether you're engaged in any financial activities, whatever endeavors that you are involved in, it certainly can help you. The spirituality, it is a very helpful tool, and it's a very, very unique tool that we must tap into. And we have failed to do that because we have very few people who assist us in this matter. We are continuously, we turn on television, we go on the internet, we tune into radio. We're constantly bombarded with this, even if it's religious authorities. All they talk about is how you can give them donation and financial help in terms of to progress your spiritual progress. My question is, how could you give money out there, and people who make these such bold statements and claims that if you give money, then you can certainly attain a spiritual level and elevate yourself spiritually. There's no connection to that. But certainly there are conmens out there are misusing this terminology of spirituality and conning people and reaching to their pockets, getting into their pockets. So there's certainly a misuse of the term spirituality and what this actual tool is. But rarely I ever find that whether I pick up a newspaper print or I go on television or I go on the internet, that there is certain a group or individuals or an institution who can help us spiritually. Now, also coming back to this particular topic, the depth of spirituality. Well, I gave you an illustration about the automobile, that you need to go to experts. There are certain experts that we must go to, whoever manufactured this automobile. They know more about it in order to resolve this problem. In the same manner, Almighty have created certain human beings that are the expert also on spirituality. And we must seek out these individuals as to who they are. And they have certain names, just like we have doctors, cardiologists who deals with the heart, and obstetricians who deal with if you have any problems with the eyes. So we have certain specialists who deal with that. So just like we have medical authorities that deal with different body parts and different body organs, and they specialize in that. So in the same manner, there certainly are human beings that the Supreme Power has sent in this world that also specialize in this subject called spirituality. And obviously when we get into the future episode, we will mention as to who these people are. For example, when they are called saints, these are saintly individuals among us who specialize in spirituality. They have dedicated their life in terms of following a certain set of principles and rules and guidelines that were sent divinely. And they applied that in their life, and they were able to achieve such a high status and such a level of spirituality that they're known spiritual masters. And also in certain terminology, they're known by saints. These are saints, saintly people, righteous individuals who have achieved this goal and attained this goal. So we need to find these individuals as well as to where they are. How do you find these individuals and what can we expect from them? And we will certainly tackle this in the future episodes as to where these people are and what are they all about. We certainly will discuss that. And how can we tell that these are the saints or the spiritual people and these are righteous, guided individuals that we need to turn to and be able to find out more answers, and certainly who can look into ourselves just like the doctor or medical authorities look into ourselves, and they have certain tools to utilize to resolve those medical issues that we have. And also these individuals as well have certain spiritual tools that they utilize, and we definitely will discuss those as to what those tools are and how do they utilize in our daily lives in order to better our lives. And definitely we understand that just as the medical authorities are important and integral part of our life, we also must understand that when we have a spirit, this soul in our body, and it continues to travel. When we were in our mother's womb as a child, then this spirit was within ourselves. We were on a journey. We were alive in our mother's womb. There was this own little world that we spent 9 months in our mother's womb. We knew not know of any other world. But prior to coming into mother's womb, this particular soul or the spirit resided somewhere as well before it came into this world, into mother's womb. So this child, we all came through this process that spent 9 months in the mother's womb. That was his time that was allotted to spend 9 months. Now we on our next level or next step, the next world, which is this world, mundane world, the spiritual world, or this materialistic world that we are right now in. And we need to find out as to how long are we going to stay here and what is required of here as well when we are here. Because definitely the soul, the spirit, just as it was mother's womb, it came here. Now the body also, it's not going to stay here. We know that everybody must die one day. They're going to leave this world. So then we got to find out spiritually in terms of what's going to happen to the soul, where it's going to travel, where it's going to go from here on. It's on this journey. So it's going to travel into another world. And those are the worlds, we're talking about those spiritual worlds, that we will tackle those in the future episodes as to what they are once we are able to pin down, because we cannot take every person that come to us and discusses spirituality, that spirituality is this, so forth. We cannot. We must authenticate just as you would. Even if you were to buy a simple a cellular phone, you find out every detail, who's the manufacturer of it, if it is a authentic phone, if it is another company who made a clone out of that. Is that a clone or is that a genuine cellular phone, what you're paying for? You want to find out about all those things before you purchase anything, that whether it's a shirt or a tie and suit or a cellular phone or any product that you purchase. You always want to find out if it's an authentic product and you're paying and getting your money worth for it. So same way, if we have thousands and millions of people coming to us from woodworks telling us spirituality is this, spirituality is that, do we just take them for the face value and accept it and say this is it? How can we take that risk? So we must be able to authenticate the source as to where the spirituality is coming from, as to what those divine books or any human books that are written, what do they have to say about in great detail spirituality? So before we can just pick up a book and rely upon it and say this is where we're going to get our information and apply that information in our daily lives. But before we do that, we must be able to authenticate those sources, whether those sources are accurate or are errant, and they have error or inerrant. So we know that if there's a divine revelation, it must be free of errors and contradiction. Because we know that the supreme power, whoever you want to call it, whatever name and label you want to give to it, that definitely the supreme power is infallible. It does not make mistakes. Whereas a human being, you could pick up any book to this day, and you and I both could go through, I go through many books that I read, I could find many errors and contradictions and mistakes in it. And I'm quite sure you can do the same thing as well. So we know that human being, when it picks up a pen and it writes something, he's not prone to errors, he's not infallible. He's going to make those mistakes, and there will be those errors. So we can pick those up, and that's why they have editors who, before the book is published, these editors go through and they pick out those errors and contradictions and mistakes, and they make sure that they have a clean book that is clean of those errors. Despite of all those facts that they do that, sometimes there's still those errors and mistakes are left in it that you can find in it. Now, whereas this divine supreme power is quite opposite, that if it has any of those divine revelations that we will go through, that we must see, and the basic principle and rule that we must apply to all of those writings, all of those revelations, that is that if this source is authentic, and if those books, the claims that they make, we have to hold our feet to the fire, that if that is true, if those claims that it makes are the authentic, so therefore it is very, very critical and it is very essential that we go through the process of authentication of those sources, that any source that we pick up, we must authenticate that whether any claims that it makes for spirituality, because this is a very, very important subject in our life that is going to impact here in this world. And when we die, and we have to find out as to where are we going. And it's very interesting. I also have taken upon myself for a few years back that I have a book that I'm writing which relates to spirituality, is that how can you love death? Basically, how death can be loved. And why would you love death? So it's a very interesting subject, but definitely it's a very intriguing subject which relates to spirituality. So one might ask, well, isn't this insane to make this claim that how can you love death? Could anybody should be loving death? Yes, if you understand and comprehend that death is part and parcel of spirituality, what it taints. Right now it's an unsolved mystery. So we are frightened by what death brings, and we see horror movies, we see all kind of things that have scared the wits and lights out of us, that we should be afraid of death. We should not accept death. So we run away from death, but we know that we cannot run away from death. So it is a fact, it's a reality that every living being must go through. And we also know, the scientists also tell us, there's an end to this earth and to this space or this universe as well. So whether they give 13 billion years, 7 billion years to survive, whatever number it is, and there's different numbers out there, what the scientists believe that we may only have 7 billion years left in this universe, this Milky Way, so-called. So it has an end to it. So as a human being, we also have an end to it. So we want to make it to be a very pleasant end, and a very joyful end, and a very happy end. We want to know exactly why we're here, and even more, far more important question, where are we going after we die, after we leave? Such a fundamental and important question. And we certainly will address that in our future episode, because spirituality is a very vast subject. There'll be many, many episodes tackling from a different aspect of it. It has many perspectives that we have to cover. So please stick with us and continue to support us in this effort that we're able to bring this to you, so you're able to distinguish between everyday life that you live as to what it is that you require to improve your life. So therefore, we must ask ourselves several questions. In these programs, I will ask you, you must ask yourself those questions, whether those questions are being asked or not, because they will certainly stimulate your brain. And when you stimulate your brain, because the mind is very inquisitive, it interacts as well. So we need to ask those questions, and then we need to look for those answers. Where are those answers? And that's why we're here, to guide you and to help you and to hold your hand, to walk you through, because this is a very vast subject and a very massive subject at that. So therefore, we need that assistance and help. I've been spending the last 30 years traveling throughout the world, meeting different people, helping different people. And believe me, when I discuss about spirituality, after 30 years of discussion and going through that, I say I just discovered the tips of the iceberg. I barely have scratched the surface when it comes to that. That's why it could be a lifetime journey attempting to discover as to what spirituality, but once you discover, it's a wonderful fruit. It's a wonderful experience that you would enjoy, and then you begin to see things fall in perspective. Then you'll be no longer afraid of death. In fact, then you begin to look forward to death. What is death? Because that's part of spirituality. Because once you know what it is and what it entails, then you begin to love death, and then you begin to look forward to it. So be with us, stick with us, write to us, and also any questions that you have, any queries that you have, please feel free to put them out and bring it to us. Now, also, we had several questions from our last episode, and we will address some of those questions. Some questions are, which we just have to simply answer those on social media, but there are certain questions that the viewers want us to address on the television, on the program. And once we begin this program, or this particular episode, the future episode, the process of the authentication of those divine revelations, we certainly will pick up that question, because it certainly relates to that. So we will address that question, because if I were to address these questions now, we certainly could be here on the air for a good couple of hours. So we have that many questions, but we will try to tackle as much as we can. Sometimes it could be overwhelming, those questions, and as the quality, the quantity of those questions, and some are repetitive questions as well. But we make efforts and attempt to make sure nobody's left out there, and we attempt to answer all those questions that do come out to us. And we encourage you, do write to us, do communicate to us any questions that you have, any queries that you have, any worries that you have, so we can certainly address those. And I hope, and also in the future episode, that you also will participate, as you have in the last episode, actively. And we want you as an active participant in this program. And do bring your ideas and any other suggestions that you may have, or comments that you may have, because it's always very useful and very helpful to us. So I will leave you with that note that we right now on the next episode, we'll embark on a very great detailed subject or the topic of spirituality, that is the authentication of the divine books or any human written books. And again, once again, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for taking this time out and coming and joining us and participating in this program. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. May Supreme Power bless you. I begin in the name of Almighty, who is most gracious, most merciful. This is a universal greeting. We begin. There's a supreme power in this universe, which nobody can deny under even scientific scrutiny as well. Today is our introductory presentation for a very intriguing journey that I would invite everybody to come join, and we can embark on this journey together.